And it's really beautiful the way that you both describe it. And what I'm receiving right now is that you both have been renegades in your own way, where you've been uncovering so much of the hidden history of humanity for so long. And right now, we were talking about this last night at dinner. It seems like the world is ripe now to receive a lot of these new, not new, but receive what we haven't seen before. And I wanted to see where both of that converges for you, around what you've gotten around this hidden history of humanity, the underbelly, as you were describing it, Sasha, of this giant that we've seen. Um, what would you both like to clear up around that and avoid any misunderstandings that the public is receiving?
Well, I feel there's just so much distortion, and it's a frequency that you can feel. If you're really tuned into your truth, if you're living authentically, you're going to notice something that's inverted, something that is tuned to a frequency that holds a lot of negativity. You know, when you look at all the dark tech and what it is attempting to do is to really drop us into a lower way of being, divide and conquer mentality, division, domination or victimhood. So this is all the programming that takes us down to the lower beings that have tried to compromise us, to make us like them, to be stuck here so they can continue to use us as a food source. So I know that I took a lot of time off of incarnating here, and I can't, recall like past life to a certain degree, as a recall, like it just happened yesterday. But I've been read, and it either resonates or it doesn't. And so I refuse to give my power away, even if something sounds good, like the Mars recruitment, right? Sure, it sounds good to run off and go survive on a colony somewhere,
Yeah, so what
because
happened?
the Earth is going to
Yeah.
destruct.
What happened with the Mars recruitment?
Well, it's too long of a story, but yeah, and I wouldn't want to take up all that time, but it has to do with timeline manipulation. If somebody's projecting this is what the future is, and people begin to believe it, your creative energy is invested in that outcome. So immediately I'm like, that is not my timeline. I am here for this planet. I am here I just knew what I was here for. Connected to the Earth, connected to the stargates, connected to just correcting reversal through going through the underworlds, through walking into inversion to bring it back into alignment, and collapsing artificial timelines through cutting any possibility of an energetic cord linking my creative essence or energy or intent into it, knowing what's false and what I can manifest myself with others that have a common goal of liberation, sovereignty, protection of our children, and the total exposure of all the dark crimes against humanity, to bring them to the light and dismantle their power, because they stole all the power. They don't have any power. We are the ones with the power. So I guess being born into the Eisenhower family, and I've been told this, and I kind of knew this from the beginning, and it was written in a book, that I was an advisor to him from the galactic realms when he was president. And I agreed to come in because the timeline and the rewritten history and the false narratives that were going to cover up what actually happened were going to be so strong that somebody needed to come in and gain this information through being targeted, through being invited to go off planet, and to have that contrast. So, and this is the thing, it's a double-edged sword. When you're targeted, it can make you stronger and remember who you are, or it can shut you down. And that's the choice we all have, because we're all targeted. So, this is what I love about Eisenhower, because he's a voice for we the people. It was never about him. It's not about me. It's about all of us. And it's time for us to realize that if it doesn't feel right, if the frequency is off, like he was saying earlier, you hold the higher technology. You are the override frequency. You can collapse all this inversion and dark weaponry and all these attempts to siphon and harvest our creative energy into an artificial timeline, convincing us that we're at the mercy of it, instead of we are the ones to collapse it and be the script writers for the future in the most beautiful way. Anything less than that is a fragment, is playing on trauma, is playing on negative ego. And it's time to not be compartmentalized and let that ego be a vehicle for spirit, for source, for our higher awareness, for our love nature, for our capacity to heal and come together and forgive and hold compassion and love for the process that we're all in.
Mm.
You'll have to recount the question for me, because she covered all the bases.
No, well, to go even deeper in that, I mean, Sasha, you've also been involved in, and you've seen the underbelly of this giant that we're seeing, that right now is collapsing in many ways, the artificial timeline. is there anything that you feel like one piece of hidden history that if you were to bring to the surface right now would completely help us understand the reality in a different way?
Yes, then that is that, again, the body temple in the geometry of the living moment. And the living moment is the only moment that is absent time. So Laura mentioned quite judiciously consciously cutting artificial timelines. That's an act consciousness in action. This is a needful and necessary part of participating in the erasure of dysfunction at the psycho-spiritual civilizational level. So she's taken that upon herself, as conscious avatars do. But remembering at all times that time in and of itself is the ultimate artifice and the ultimate fiction. In and of itself, it doesn't exist. And the proof of that is always the geometry of the living moment, right here, right now. There is no future, there is no past, or everything is a future and everything is a past at the same time. That can be mathematically proven in equations. So let's not even go there. But let's talk about illusion, delusion, Maya, and how we become intoxicated into memology, into a group think, into elemental cloud intelligences, and that parasite off us and indenture us into idolatry and false light worship, and we end up banging our heads on the temple floor and, playing with rosaries and wailing to the gods, and thereby manifesting Yahweh and Jehovah through the abdication and abnegation of our own life force into third-party intervention. So we are the ones that manifest the gods that devour us. We are the ones that manifest the bogeyman through the absence, the abnegation and abdication of our life force and our divinity. So be clear, I am the Alpha and the Omega. I am the child of God, but I am God speaking about the child of God. And that means that to get to that point of serendipity, which is pure bliss within the 0 point, which is the geometry of right here, right now, where cancer cannot exist, where pain does not exist, cannot exist. There is nothing there. There is no fear. There cannot be fear. There can only be immanence, which is a perennial state of witness where genius flows through you. That's how anyone who's speaking truth is tapped into that. But let's make that a perpetual, a torus field of affirmation and creative expansion and bliss and joy and euphoria. We have the choice to do that. And then whatever we envision will manifest instantly. That's the part of the beauty of where we're at right here, right now, when the collective, the memology of the now is that we're awakening morphogenetically to the reality that there never was a fucking God in the first place. And that was an abomination. The idea of God externalized, extraneous, outside of self, not absolutely connected to the witness that I am, is an abomination. Time itself is an abomination as an idea. It is Cronus, the titan that devours its own young. But that's why blood ritualism and ritual harvest of humanity and pedophilia and governments and banks devouring humans through time and motion and inertia, through coin and taxations and poverty and penury and misery. We've driven that into manifestation. Let's undream it by simply entering into the immanent living moment right here, right now, where my majesty is rekindled, where the mantle is upon my shoulders, and I choose otherwise. So for me, that is the great offering, the great benediction again of now, is that we can choose to opt out of the entire Saturnian wheel that has entrained and entrapped us for millennia.
And I do want to hear, that was beautiful, you two, and what you're both dreaming right now for humanity. But before going into that, I did want to pull a thread. Laura, you were mentioning your lineage with Eisenhower, and Dwight Eisenhower being the 34th president of the United States. He warned humanity about something he could see coming. What did he really see? And how close are we to what he saw at this time?
Well, I think he saw all of us. I think one of the biggest and most important messages I feel he wanted to relay is that we are the powers. We are leaders. It's not about the government structure. It's not about one person. It's not about even our vote. Not to say that it's not important to make sure there's good leadership and know who's who, but to crumble this war between ourselves, this rise of misplaced power, the military-industrial complex, how multi-layered it is. it's something that a lot of people don't really feel is even going on. I mean, the shock that people express towards what they consider to be conspiracy theory without remembering what he said in the final speech, but grabbing onto maybe what they learned in history class, that we won the Second World War, but not really focusing in on really unpacking what he was trying to say, or even looking at what people are bringing forward about Balfour and other things. This is kind of what my focus has been. What is this hidden history? So I really feel, with him seating, the white hats, and how that's not just connected to a group of individuals just in government that have turned, to the bright side of things. It's all of us, really. We're a team. And I feel like that message was to help us to understand this threatening outer authority, this dark Saturn, tyranny, control, misplaced authority, that's abusive authority, the dark underbelly of all this that we're, bringing to light, that this rise of misplaced power, like he's saying, is the shadow of ourselves that is facing us in order to have that final breakthrough. And if we can realize it, this dependency bond we've had towards it, how our self-worth is linked to it, and how we're indoctrinated to function in this punishment reward system, fear of God, fear of ourselves, fear of the dark, this power is, leveraging us and taking advantage of that. And it's wanting to keep world wars alive. It's wanting to, keep this constant, struggle alive, so that we never reach this goal, which is this greater dream, which is pulling our energy back and saying, I want to create something more beautiful. And it has to do with not consenting anymore, not giving your power away, and recognizing that we have a say. So to me, it's like the false authority is like a foster parent. It's not our true parent. It wants to run the system through lower creator energies, connected to Anunnaki, connected to any kind of diversion away from true source, the 0-point unified field, our God self, in relationship to our DNA, which is a divine blueprint of the Krisztosz-Szofia that has been shut down, thrown into junk DNA. So when you look at the rings of Saturn and how that relates to the moon, the simulation is this dark Saturnian illusion of this power game that people have become addicted to and dependent on. So this rise is like, this is the final showdown. And it's either going to rise and you're going to notice it and you're going to divorce yourself from it, because it's no different than a false partner too. And if you do have that breakthrough, then the real relationship with creation is nurtured, the real relationship with yourself. And to me, that is where our DNA begins to light up, to the hierogamic union, the planetary grid network begins to heal out of the disconnect in order to keep us in this duality tree of knowledge that's been targeted with mind control, social engineering, and that we really restore this relationship. And I knew he understood this, because that's the exchange that I've had with him. So even though that wasn't all in the speech,
Yeah.
I'm getting those downloads and he's over there just like doo-doo-doo. And I just, really feel like he didn't even cover what it was about. But there's other communications coming in, and it was to remind us that when you're, being raised in this world, to not forget who you are, that there's starseeds, there's advanced souls, there's people that have a soul calling, and to never, ever lose connection with that. And, as parents and as guardians, to really nurture souls in stepping into that, because this rise of power will crush you, try and make you something that you're not, so that you become the perpetrator. But a perpetrator in a different way than what we see in the underbelly of the cabal. A perpetrator is in passing on that indoctrination, passing on that programming, silencing victims, pretending it doesn't exist, keeping this game alive, and it's only going to get worse. And if we don't stop it in its tracks, that's a trajectory of enslavement. So we needed that warning, but I think we would have woken up regardless. But it's good that we had that marker to look back on.
Yeah. Sasha, also, when you look back at that final speech with Dwight Eisenhower, is there anything that connects the dots for you around what you've discovered?
I remember the first time I read it, it had a profound impact on me, but much the same way that reading Jack Kennedy's speech, I think 10 or 11 days before he was popped by the Bush clan, the cabal, in Dallas, Texas, that same sense of deep foreboding. And I just go back and wonder how many people at the time listening were impacted by it and actually picked up psionically the import of what was being said. I don't know nearly as much as Laura does on the subject for obvious reasons, but I do know that that her great grandfather's legacy was connected to a uniquely nefarious vector, which was a necessary one, which was essentially the splitting of the atom. You consider that two of the brains that were behind the splitting of the atom were two of the finest brains and minds, arguably, in history, and that's Oppenheimer and Einstein. And yet these two souls and their life's work were commandeered, co-opted, in a sense, under a sense of duty or patriot, whatever the hell, however it was construed, in order to be a confluence behind splitting the atom and bringing about the conflagration of the most diabolical weaponry ever conceived since the time of Atlantis. So that's a horror story in on itself. And I just think that warning the world about the military-industrial complex was a seminal tone that was being struck that really is the source code now of disclosure. That's the best way I can put, because it was a clarion call to the people out there. It was not speaking to the power, it was speaking to the people in order to awaken us to speak to power. And that happened as a result, essentially, of that.
Mm. I love how, as the conversation progresses, we're getting even deeper into the weeds of the truth. And I did want to ask you both, from what you're aware of, from your own research and going into this world, is what agreements were made by non-human intelligences on behalf of humanity that we're still seeing play out in our world right now.
Can I just set the stage for this?
Yeah.
Just to finish off also the business of splitting the atom, although that was a horrendous vector in civilizational history, it was a very necessary and needful one. And what that did in simplistic and reductive terms was splitting of the atom breached the fabric of time-space, so to speak, sent up a hyperdimensional, interdimensional flare, and was a permission being granted to nefarious and egregious intelligences to now come into the temporal realm.
That was the moment?
Yes. In simple terms, that was the heralding of the new age of ultimate galactic interventionism at the negative level, but at the same time, it was also inviting the higher realms as well to come in as guardians and step forward now, because now that we had come of age and started to play with dangerous toys, right, that was the moment at which they could also come forth. So it was, in a sense, the starting pistol for the star nations in their dualistic alpha omega spectrum to come in intervention into this world. And that was necessary to awaken each of us within the great sleep, which is to what? To the event horizon, which teaches us that we are the galactic hybrid, that every human being is, by distinction and definition, now a Draco reptilian, Zeta reticulan, Alpha Centaurian, Pleiadian, Sirian, whatever. All of the symphony of the stellar genetics and stellar linguistics has played out psychohistorically in each of us, and is now cascading into a compression point whereupon Homo Luminous emerges in the center of that thrall of humanity as being the true angelic indigo human. And that is the reconvention point with Alpha Omega. So job well done, humanity.